Hello and welcome to the news updates on AFRICUNIA television, where we bring you updates from the African scene, the foreign scene and the world of sports. From our studio here in the nation's commercial capital, Lagos, Nigeria. And I'm Deborah, Ezeh. On the Nigerian scene today, the big moment for the governing All Progressives Congress since the APC came last night. Yesterday's special convention of the ruling APC was the climax of horse trading and back-and-forth debates on consensus and zoning controversies. The nation waited for the commencement of the presidential primary, and at exactly 7:42 p.m. the long-drawn contest began with the arrival of President Muhammad Buhari to Eagle Square, clearly 4 hours behind a scheduled appearance to kickstart the exercise. All-day leading aspirants and party stakeholders, especially the Progressives governor, threw in all into the game in a last-minute effort to make all contending forces align for the long night ahead. Moments before the climax, when 2,322 delegates will make the decisive choice with their votes, 23 presidential aspirants had time in the sun to shine. Some shone brightly on the big stage and others fizzled into the shadow. Against the expected turn of events, were earlier reports that the list of aspirants had been pawned down to 5 or 3, but all 23 hopefuls, except the former Minister of State for Education, Emeka Nwajuba, took turns to address delegates and the nation why they should be given the chance to be the party's flag bearer. After Akpabio, older aspirants who mounted the podium to announce their withdrawal from the presidential contest to support Tinubu were former Governor of Ogun State, Senator Ibikunle Amosun, Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State, former Speaker of the House of Representatives Dimeji Bankole, Governor Abubakar Badaru of Jigawa, Senator Ajayi Borough Office, and the only female in the contest, Uju Ken Ohaneye. Presidential aspirant Dr. Ogbonaya Onu decried the marginalization of the southeast geopolitical zone as far as the occupants of the exalted seat of the presidency is concerned. And now the chairman of the election committee of the convention and the chairman of the Progressives Governor Forum (PGF), Atiku Bagudu, announced that the presidential aspirant with the highest number of votes will be declared the winner. He said the fewer numbers of delegates at the Eagle Square would make the electoral process more easy and manageable, unlike when the party had about 8,000 delegates at the convention in March. Now, still in Nigeria, in business news, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund (IMF) see prospects in the removal of trade barriers and incentives as the risk of stagflation spread across the global community. Now, this comes as the World Bank raises Nigeria 2022 economic growth prospects to 3.4% to 0.9 percentage points higher than 2.5% contained in the January Global Economic Prospect. The growth is expected to slow down to 3.2% next year through 2024, which is also higher than its earlier position by 40 basis points. Nigeria's growth projection for the year deviates slightly from sub-Saharan Africa 3.7%, and is also a moderate top-up of first quarter's 3.11% growth rate. The World Bank June Global Economic Prospect report says rising inflation and policy tightening are offsetting the impact of favorable commodity prices, but notes that an increase in production and reduction of trade restrictions could help to moderate the prices of essentials and save the situation. It called on countries to reduce trade barriers as deliberate action to prevent supply chain reduction. Now moving on, Radical Economic Freedom Fighter Party President Julius Malema says South African President Cyril Ramaphosa must step down pending investigation into money laundering following reports that money was found stolen from his Falafala farm. Malema, who addressed journalists on Tuesday, said Ramaphosa had failed to prove to South Africans that he is a worthy president. Meanwhile, the ruling African National Congress, ANC, has welcomed and commended the decision by the president to voluntarily present himself to the ANC Integrity Commission. It said in a statement without specifying a date. Embroiled in a burglary scandal, President Cyril Ramaphosa will appear before the party's Integrity Commission. Robbers allegedly broke into Ramaphosa's Falafala farm in the northeast of the country, where they found $4 million in cash hidden in furniture. Ramaphosa himself has disputed the sum of money in question, but accepted that he buys and sells animals sometimes through cash, sometimes through transfers. I have never stolen money from anywhere and I will never do so. I have never stolen from taxpayers, Ramaphosa added. And now still on the African scene, the heads of the armed forces of the East African Community EAC met yesterday in Goma to discuss the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, where clashes between the M23 rebel group and the army have displaced tens of thousands in recent weeks. Representatives of the DRC, Burundi, Kenya, Uganda, South Sudan, and Tanzania, as well as the head of MONUSCO, UN mission in the DRC, attended the meeting. Rwanda, which is also a member of the EAC, was absent. One of the main aims of the meeting was to establish a regional joint force to contain and combat all negative forces destabilizing the country. While the meeting was taking place, the Congolese army confirmed that 2 soldiers had been killed and 5 others were injured during clashes with the M23 in Rutshuru region, about 60 kilometers from Goma. A new wave of violence in Congo has displaced tens of thousands since May, and most of them now living in shelters and churches in Goma, where a visit of the Pope is expected at the beginning of July. And now, away from the African scene, we now head to the foreign scene. 13 people died when a passenger train derailed in eastern Iran on Wednesday, the semi-official Fars news agency said, while 60 passengers were seriously injured. The train traveling to the city of Yazd collided with an excavator before going off the rails 50 kilometers from the city of Tabas, where it began its journey. 5 ambulances are at the accident scene and another 12 are on their way, the crisis management chief of the province of South Khorasan told news agencies. And now moving on, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on Tuesday criticized efforts to suppress press freedom in several Latin American countries and said the United States seeks to increase media protection in the region with the most modest of journalists. Now speaking at a press freedom event ahead of the Summit of the Americas, a regional gathering aiming to address economic problems and migration, Blinken said governments in the region were using sweeping legislation and surveillance to squash freedom of press and intimidate journalists. He has singled out Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela, the 3 countries President Joe Biden excluded from the Summit of Americas because they were not democratic, saying the act of independent journalism constituted a crime there. In March, El Salvador registered 62 murders in a single day, the bloodiest since the end of the civil war in 1992. In response, the Legislative Assembly, dominated by President Nayib Bukele's right-leaning populist party, declared a state of emergency, suspending citizens' constitutional rights. And now still on the foreign scene, following weeks of violence in different parts of Israel and West Bank, Israeli nationalists have targeted the red, green, black, and white Palestinian colors in an escalating flag war that underscores a struggle over status and identity. And now the conflict reached a high last week when a bill banning the display of Palestinian flag at state-funded institutions, including universities, passed a reading into Israeli parliament to support of the bill raising the Palestinian flag, which to some Jewish Israelites represents an enemy entity, is a provocation. To many Palestinians in Israel, the bill is an extension of what they see as Israeli attempt to erase their identity. In the run-up to last week's vote, students organized videos in Israeli universities to commemorate what Arabs call the Nakba, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were forced from their homes or fled in the 1948 war that accompanied the foundation of Israel. And now on to the sports scene, all the top stories and transfer rumors from Wednesday, 8th of July 2022. Stay with me. Now, news making the major headlines. The national leader of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has emerged as the winner of the party's presidential primary. He obtained 1,271 votes to defeat his closest rival, ex-minister Rotimi Amechi and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. While Amechi polled 360 votes, Osinbajo scored 235 votes. He contested against 13 other aspirants, which are Chukwuemeka Nwajuba, Pastor Tunde Bakare, Ahmed Rufai, Senator Rocha Sokorocha, Jack Rich, Governor Ben Ayade, Governor David Umai, Senator Ahmed Yerima, Dr. Ahmed Lawan, Osinbajo, Amechi, Governor Yaya Bello, and Ogbonoya Onu. 9 aspirants had earlier stepped down, 8 of whom asked their supporters to vote for Tinubu, while 1 asked the supporter to vote for Osinbajo. Those who stepped down before voting began are Governor Abubakar Badru of Jigawa State, Robert Borough Office, Ken Nanami, Ibikunle Amosu, Dimeji Bankole, Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi, and Godswill Akpabio. Tinubu will face 75-year-old Atiku Abubakar of the opposition People's Democratic Party, among others, in the February 25th presidential election in Nigeria. And that concludes the news update from us on AFRICUNIA Television. Do ensure to follow all our social media platforms on Jointum, Instagram, Pangram, Facebook, and on Twitter in that respective order. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and you can link us up on www.africunia.tv. Once again, I am Deborah Ezeh. Bye for now.